Okay, this is video 3A. Today we're going to be talking about the standard cabinet construction as well as cabinet vocabulary. Um, so as you work on things like cabinets, you're going to see a lot of or hear a lot of terminology thrown out there, which may not make a lot of sense to you right now. But we're going to go through that one by one to help you understand some of the terms that you get to hear when you're talking about cabinets or when you're working with cabinets. So without further ado, I have these drawings pulled up. These are standard construction drawings produced by our engineering department here to help you understand the construction and the intentions of how we want to plot cabinet drawings. So let's start with base cabinets. So looking at the first page of this document here, um, these are base cabinets. Now, base cabinets are just cabinets that sit on the floor. You're also going to be looking at upper cabinets later today. Upper cabinets are wall-mounted cabinets. Of course, they are upper because they are hung above a counter. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into that. With all cabinets, we'll go through the vocabulary here. We have, let's see, if a cabinet, so I'm looking at the plan view of this middle drawing here. So this is looking at the top down of a bank of cabinets. So you're seeing the countertop right here. And this line with the dashes represents walls around these cabinets. So these walls here are going to correlate to the elevation view down here. So this is looking at the front of the same bank of cabinets. All right. And so going back to the top-down view, you can see there is no wall on the right-hand side. So these cabinets are kind of open to the room, meaning that one of the vocabulary terms I have for you here is what's called a finished end. On our drawings, we'll label that with an FE to the side of the cabinet that is going to need to have a finished end. Now, finished ends, all they are, it's just a term used for our shop and for our installers to understand that the side of this cabinet needs to have the same finish as the front of that cabinet because you will see it in that room. So think about it like going back to this view here. So if this is that finish end here, this is the side of a cabinet because you're seeing this is the front door of the cabinet there. This is the side of the cabinet and this is the back of the cabinet here. So the side of this cabinet is what we call what we would call a finished end because it is open to the room. Okay, so we'll go back here. On the other side of the coin, if you have a cabinet that is going to be placed next to a wall, so like on the left-hand side of this plan view and the left-hand side of this elevation view, you will have to add what's called a filler. Now, our standard filler on cabinets is 3/4 of an inch. That doesn't mean that it has to stay 3/4 of an inch. Of course, if an architect is persistent on asking for a filler that's wider, we can definitely make a wider filler for them. We do like to deal with what we can for as far as like standards go for construction. We like to try to remain within standard as much as possible. So most times when you see a filler, it's going to be 3/4 of an inch wide, hence what we've got here. Later on, we're going to talk about inside corner fillers, and those fillers are going to be a little different. They'll be wider than 3/4 of an inch, but we'll talk about that here shortly. So actually, why don't we just look at one right here if I can find one. Let me see if I got one in here. I might not. All right, so an inside filler is when you have two banks of cabinets that are coming together at a corner, 90-degree corner. I'll try to include a picture of one of those here if I can find one. But anyways, when you have an inside filler, meaning when you have two cabinets that are 90 degrees from one another on the inside corner of a cabinet or inside of a kitchen, you're going to need a filler that is 2 7/8 wide. Now that's 2 7/8 actual filler size. The scene part of it. So imagine there's a cabinet here, and we're looking at the front of the cabinet at that 90 degree, and then we have a cabinet over to the left-hand side. Now our filler would be 2 inches visible on an inside corner, but 2 7/8 total with the door excluded. So it's hard to visualize that. I'll try to come up with a better visual for you here shortly on that one. But that's what a filler is. And a filler really is there not just for, it's not like an aesthetic um, piece of what we add to the cabinets, but what it does is it prevents the cabinet door from swinging open and hitting the wall on the left-hand side. It helps with that. It also helps with occasionally you'll have a cabinet pole. So you might have like a bar pole on your cabinet that sits there. And as that door opens, you want to make sure that that filler is there so that this pole does not hit the drywall and do damage to the drywall or scuff it up. So fillers serve that purpose. We will also be looking at hardware later on. So in addition to fillers, there is a hardware that we use. It's called a hinge restrictor clip. And hinge restrictor clips also help with preventing the door from swinging open too far where it would hit the wall. They limit the angle of the door as it opens, so you can't open it past like 90 degrees, for example. So we'll talk about that in the next video when we talk about hardware, but that's another solution that we have that actually helps prevent drywall damage when a door is like sitting next to a wall like this. All right, we are going to switch gears just a little bit. We're going to go look at a section view through a cabinet here. So let's go down to this view down here. So this is a slice through of a cabinet, a section view. That's what's going on here. You can see that we're cutting through that cabinet and we're looking this direction. So we're cutting through the cabinet vertically, looking that way towards the right. So that's what this view is here. Now, there are some terms that we need to look at with a cabinet section that you won't see in any other view. One of those terms is down here. These are called shims. Shims are essentially ways to level your cabinet. So if the floor in the building is not completely level, this will help make it so we can make our cabinet level at the top. So meaning that when we go to install the countertop, it's not going to be completely out of whack and not level with the building. So it is surprising, but a lot of the floors in these big commercial buildings are usually not level and they do have some variation to them. So that is why we have this shim space below our cabinet. So shims are just little pieces of material that we wedge under the cabinet to be able to level it properly in the field when it goes to be installed. At the back of your cabinet, you're going to see these wood blocks, just like this. These wood blocks that sit between the cabinet and the wall, these are called nailers. All right, nailers are typically going to be 3/4 of an inch by 4 inches tall, 3/4 thick by 4 inches tall, and they are usually used to be able to place. Well, we'll sometimes use shim here too, but nailers will be used to kind of be able to control how far forward the cabinet sits. So, for example, if you wanted your countertop, in this case, to be in line with your cabinet door, just like what's drawn here, you may need nailers or shim behind your cabinet to be able to pull that off because just like the floor being unlevel, drywall does tend to be uneven as well. And so we're looking at a drywall wall that's back here behind this cabinet. And because it's drywall and sometimes they work a little too quickly when they install the drywall, it could be a little bit uneven. And so as you go and look at let's look at the plan view. If you look at a plan view here, it's not going to show that the drywall is uneven, but in the actual field, your drywall might actually kind of go in and out a little bit. And this is very, very dramatic, but it can vary slightly. So it might actually look something like this. And if that's the case, you really do need those nailers or that shim there behind the cabinet to be able to make sure that that cabinet is staying flush with the front edge of your countertop like that. So all of our cabinet blocks have those built in, so you won't have to really worry too much about having to include that on your drawing because it's already pre-drawn for you, but it's something to take note of and to understand why that's there. Um, if you see these little tiny circles on your cabinet block as well, these guys are wooden dowels. All right, so that is just a really tiny cylinder of wood that is used to apply glue to and to allow the side of the cabinet or the side of the cabinet to be glued to the bottom and tops of the cabinet. I thought I had one here with me. I was going to present it here. If you'd like to see what a dowel looks like, you can go through the drawer behind you if you're in Loves Park, or if you're in Austell, go ahead and get a hold of me. I'll show you what one of those looks like. But yeah, that's wooden dowels is what you're seeing there, as well as right here. Those are there to help hold the cabinet together as it's being glued. And once the glue is set, those dowels help hold it all together, make sure it doesn't go anywhere. It makes the cabinet real nice and sturdy. All right. Also looking at the front of your cabinet, we have what is called base trim here. Okay. And base trim is used throughout a building typically. You will see it on cabinets a lot, but also on walls of the building as well. So at the bottom of that base trim, there's another vocabulary term we're going to talk about, and that's called scribe. Scribe, like that. So scribe is another form of leveling, essentially. So just like we level our cabinet because the floor may be out of whack, like it may not be completely level, if you think about it, if we were to make this base trim exactly 4 inches tall and the floor did kind of vary in height, this base trim would have a gap below it if the floor dropped at all. And so what we do is when we go to produce this base trim, we're going to add what's called scribe. Scribe is typically 1 inch tall. And all it is we are setting this base trim an inch taller than what's intended. And it has this little chamfered edge on the back of it, which will allow the install team to be able to install this. And if they need to, they can cut it down to be level with the floor. So scribe is really important when it comes to anything that actually is touching the floor in terms of panels or trim that's riding the floor like that. You want to make sure that there is scribe there because it will make a huge difference when you go to install this. So again, it's kind of hard to visualize that from the AutoCAD side or from the engineering side. If you ever get a chance to go out in the field and see a job site, you kind of realize like, hey, this is why we need this here. Because a lot of times these floors are not completely level. So, all right, so that's scribe. We've talked about nailers, we've talked about shim, fillers, finished ends, and scribe so far. Let's see, what else do I have for you? So we're going to also talk about a couple other things. Where the base trim is located, if you see a notch like this at the bottom of a cabinet, this is what is called a toe kick. So the toe kick is located at the bottom of the cabinet, and it's going to be just like this. That's another common term that you're going to hear when you're dealing with cabinets. So that's your toe kick there. As we make our way towards the top of these cabinets, although it's not drawn here, you've probably seen this before, but there are sometimes some things that are called backsplashes that you'll see. Let's call it backsplash here. It's, like I said, not drawn here, but a backsplash is kind of an extension of the countertop that sticks up like this. And sometimes there's even going to be things that are called side splashes, which are in the background here. You're going to see that right there. A side splash that's back there on the wall beyond. All right. So we'll look at this in the plan view as well. So if you're dealing with a backsplash or side splash, what you're going to see in the plan view is your backsplash is going to run just like this, and your side splash is going to run right there on the wall side. You won't ever have a side splash on a finished end or a room or an end that's open to the room, but if you have a wall like this, 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to ask you to provide a side splash too if they're including a backsplash. So again, terminology here, this is your side splash. And this is your backsplash here. There's a couple other vocab terms for your cabinet drafting here. So once we get through that, we're going to make our way over to upper cabinets next. So upper cabinets, like mentioned before, they're just cabinets that hang on the wall. There are a few things we got to look at here that are a little different than what we have been talking about so far. So these cabinets, because they are mounted to the wall, they utilize what is called cabinet cleat. Cleat. Cabinet cleat is a form of French cleat. So if you do some Googling, you'll see French cleats are 2 pieces of material that are made to lap one another. So one piece of material will be fixed to the cabinet. So for example, this piece here is actually going to be screwed into the cabinet and doweled in. So this piece here is your upper cleat. All right. And then this piece that's down here is going to be the lower cleat. Now this part gets fastened to the wall behind the cabinet. So this will be screwed in like that to the wall. This will be glued, screwed, and doweled to the back of your cabinet. And then when they take this cabinet out to the field, they'll put this on the wall, and then they'll just take this cabinet, and all they got to do is lift it up and drop it on that cleat, and that cabinet is fixed in place and it's not going anywhere. So that's cabinet cleat. Usually sits right behind a upper cabinet just like this. We'll talk about panel cleat here when we get to panels later on as well, but that is just a form of attachment to the wall. Let's see what else we've got. So we talked about dowels already. That's the same thing here, wooden dowels here. All right. Now upper cabinets though, a lot of times they will have what's called a valance. Now the valance can be located at the top or the bottom of the cabinet or sometimes both. And I'm going to see if we have, doesn't look like we have one in here specifically. So what I'm going to do is on the side here, I'm going to open up AutoCAD. I'm going to show you what a valance should look like on a upper cabinet. Valances will usually be placed on an upper cabinet for most times what they're there for is to hide a under mount light fixture that sits below the upper cabinet used to illuminate the countertop below. So I want to kind of look at one of those real quick here with you. I'm going to open up an AutoCAD template file and we'll pull one in here for you. Okay, let's take a look at an upper cabinet with valances. So, all right, here we go. Upper cabinets. What I'm looking at here is what we call the blocks file. This is what feeds the information into your tool palette. So all of these are available to you within the tool palette as well. This is just a kind of database that holds all of those blocks. So, right. This is an upper cabinet with a valance. So as mentioned, usually there's a light fixture that sits right here below that valance. And the cabinet is constructed with a piece of material that just sticks down below the inside of that cabinet. The cabinet door on something like this would still sit right here. Let's see, 0.75. Okay, so that white line or that white rectangle there is representing where your cabinet door would still sit. So the valance sits behind the cabinet door sticks down, usually in line with that valance there. And then they usually will put a small LED light fixture right behind here, which will help illuminate below the countertop. It would be below this cabinet. All right, so with that being said, let's also talk about reveals here. So upper cabinets will use occasionally what is called a reveal. Reveals are a lot like fillers. So if you want to think about it kind of like that, just try not to get them too mixed up. Um, a reveal is going to be a strip of material that sits between the cabinet and the ceiling above. So if you had a ceiling above this cabinet, let me drop one in here for you. Boop, 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 boop. Oops, hold on one sec, sorry. Okay. So let's say your cabinet was constructed in a way where there was what's called either a soffit or a ceiling right above that cabinet. Now, if that does happen, it is going to be really important to remember that we do need to place a reveal in between the ceiling and the top of your cabinet. That reveal is going to typically be 3/4 of an inch. Oops. Okay. Be typically 3/4 of an inch. And the reason that reveal exists might surprise you. You might think, well, maybe the soffit's wavy too, or the ceiling's wavy too, just like the drywall or the floor. Well, there may be a little bit of that, but really the reveal here is there for the purpose of, as you're installing this cabinet, the the cabinet and the cleat that are attached to the cabinet need to have what's called lift-off space. So let me go ahead and group that together real quick. So I have this cabinet over here, and let me add a wall to this too. All right, so I have this cabinet over here on the side, and if I want to go to install this cabinet, one of the things that I really do need is, I'm going to move this over so you can kind of see what's happening, is I can't just slide the cabinet straight back because these cleats are going to actually hit each other and they're not going to allow that cabinet to pass through. So what I need to do is I need to have what's called lift-off space. So when I go to install an upper cabinet, I actually need to lift it up approximately like 3/4 of an inch, slide it back, and then drop it down like this, which will lock that cabinet in place, and then it's not going to go anywhere. But because of the angle on the cleat, I do need to be able to lift this up and move it forward or back to be able to install it. So once the cabinet is installed, that's where we go and we put that reveal in after the fact. So the reveal will come in, it'll get shoved in place, kind of just like popped in above the cabinet. And then we'll usually put what's called a stop block behind it. The stop block's going to prevent that reveal from wanting to slide back across the top of the cabinet. So it's going to keep this from going, back like this over time. And this little stop block here will be kind of attached to the top of the cabinet like so. So that is a reveal. Again, that's usually going to be 3/4 of an inch tall, and that'll go above your upper cabinet if you have a ceiling above your cabinet. If you don't have a ceiling above your cabinet, you don't have to even worry about that reveal. That's something that is completely unnecessary when you don't have a ceiling above your cabinet. But if you do, be really careful. You're going to want to add that in. A lot of times architects will not show that because they don't really have a full understanding of how a cabinet is installed. So we have to remember to add that in on our own. Um, just real important note there. So as far as all that goes, I think we have covered a decent amount of vocabulary for upper cabinets, as well as base cabinets here. We're going to be talking more about the cabinet hardware in the next video, so if you continue on, you'll see more of that. And all of these documents here are going to be in the engineering in-house drive under the quality folder. If you'd like, I can send you a link to that too if it helps you with understanding these cabinets and how they're constructed. Yeah, I think that's about it for right now. So we'll call this one here and we'll move on to cabinet hardware next.